Welcome back to The Effective Educator. Last video, we looked at a high-level overview of what I called the productivity parfait. It's a way to layer goals from daily and weekly up through monthly, semesterly, and finally annual goals so that you keep moving forward on the things that matter. You can find the first video here. But before we can set goals, we need to ask ourselves, where are we going? My father comes from the military, and they have an expression in the military. It's mowing down the 5-meter targets. This is when you're knocking down short-term goal after short-term goal, but you're never actually getting the chance to look at longer-term goals. Now, the rhythm of the school year really contributes to this for teachers because we have commenting, deadlines, PTC dates, report card due dates, regular reporting requirements and expectations, and all kinds of other 5-meter targets popping up constantly in our lives. It's critical that we take time to look beyond those to longer term things we want to achieve. It's also essential that we diversify our goals in the process. Work is only a part of our lives. Now, this frequently doesn't feel true, especially at the peak of the semester, but it is true. A lot of educators will try to balance that out by just looking forward to the vacations, and then you get on the vacation and it's all vacation all the time. There's definitely a place for that. The reason for the big delay between posting my last video and posting this video was a 3-week trip home, where I chose to focus my attention on the niece I haven't seen since she was born, instead of focusing on things like recording these videos. But it's essential to also spread that throughout the year, that downtime and that focus outside your career. So before we dive into setting goals for different time horizons, let's take a look at our lives as a whole. So in his book, Agile Results, which is informing most of this series, J.D. Meyer calls this hotspots. Meyer is a programmer, and in programming, a hotspot is a section of code that runs more frequently than others. More generally, a hotspot is something that gets used more than other things. So if we're talking about foot traffic, the area around the door to your classroom is a hotspot. In terms of which applications you're using for work, if you work at a Google school, I suspect Google Classroom is probably a hotspot for you. You probably spend more time in Google Classroom than you do in other applications. We want to recognize hotspots for 2 reasons: optimization and balance. First, consider grading. If you have 2 assignments, and one of those assignments is a hotspot in your grading routine, perhaps it takes up 25 or 30% of your grading time for the week, you're going to benefit more from getting efficient at grading that assignment than you will from getting efficient at grading an assignment that only takes 2 or 3% of your grading time for the week. This is being efficient over effective. We want to put our efficiency in the place where it's going to make the most difference. Second, whenever you're using something too much, it inevitably wears down. It wears out faster. So thinking about traffic flow again. If your school only opens up 1 set of double doors for students to leave through on their way to the cafeteria, you're going to see a traffic jam there. If you open a 2nd set of doors, you're going to see a dramatic reduction in the traffic through both sets of doors because the students will spread themselves out. Hotspots represent the different parts of our lives which we need to either optimize or balance, or both. In the book, these hotspots are mind, body, emotions, career, financials, relationships, and fun. If you're accomplishing everything you want in your career, but you are emotionally drained and your health is suffering, you're out of balance and you're not living your full potential. So each year, you're going to want to take a little time to look at each of these hotspots and make a few commitments of your time to them. The main questions we're asking here are, does this take up too much of my time? And do I spend enough time on this? So as a practical example from one of my hotspots for this year, I'm committing to limit myself to 45 hours a week of time spent on my job, teaching computer science. That's going to give me about 3 hours per week outside of contracted time to work on work. Now, I already know This means I'm going to have to optimize some of my grading procedures. I have been entirely too lax around grading that, particularly around tests. And it may take me the better part of the first semester to get down to that target. But that's my goal. As a counterexample, I've committed to spend a minimum of 10 hours a week building relationships with my coworkers and spending time with my wife. And that's going to be time that can't be spent on work or on other things. It's going to be time focused on the relationship, not just on being present with them. Now, maybe you don't need time constraints on every single one of your hotspots. For example, I don't have a time constraint on my financials category for this year. It only takes me a couple of hours a month to keep up on that, plus maybe a little bit of extra around tax time. So I haven't put that in as a time constraint. But that doesn't mean I'm going to ignore that category completely. The next step that we have is we're going to set outcomes for these hotspots. These are going to be longer term goals or objectives, ideally ones that you think will take about a year or longer. They could be longer, but generally a year. When describing these, I find it's generally better if they target habits or big one-off events. So a bad example of an outcome under the body hotspot would be, I can do 100 push-ups. That's not a habit unless you plan on doing 100 per day, and it isn't really big enough to count as a one-off event. I think a better example would be, I follow a consistent exercise routine. And one of the milestones towards that might be, I can do 100 push-ups. A one-off event would be, I run a marathon. Notice neither of these is very specific. I haven't specified which exercise routine. I haven't specified when I'm going to run the marathon. That's because I'm not committing to these goals yet. These are things that I want to do eventually, but I don't necessarily want to be working towards those things today. An additional consideration here is that these things must be within your control as much as possible. So I have set an outcome around this YouTube channel, but I did not set have 1,000 subscribers as an outcome because I have no control over whether or not you subscribe, though please do subscribe if this is interesting to you. The outcome I have set is I publish content consistently for my subscribers. And you'll see shortly that I'll actually refine that down further when we get into the annual goals. You should try to have about 1 to 3 outcomes for every single hotspot in your life. The whole point of this stage is to look at your life holistically and to balance work and life. I want you to notice that career is only a single category here. Now, we're finally ready to move on from hotspots to annual goals. So I want you to join us next week, where we're going to go ahead and plan our entire year. Till then, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment if you found this video helpful. Thank you.